Warning, the following video may contain adult language and themes. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. If you have a problem with this, please stop playing this video now. Okay, so this is my movie review of the 2007 horror thriller film called Timber Falls. Like I said, it was released in 2007. It's rated R for strong, bloody violence and some sexuality and stuff like that, but it was directed by Tony Giglio, never heard of him, and it stars Josh Randall, Brianna Brown, and Nick Searcy. No one I really recognize either. Although I did recognize one woman in the entire movie, but I don't remember from where. Anyway, currently it has a 5.3 on Internet Movie Database out of around 4,000 votes, and 5.3 for a horror movie is pretty respectable, which is why I checked it out. It's rated R, and my spoiler-free review is basically the opening sequence and the final sequence are the best parts of the film. They're pretty good. No, actually, I'd say they're a little bit above average. But everything else in between is just bullshit. It's just boring. By the book. Horror hillbilly, people who go up in the woods camping and they run into mutated horror hillbillies. It's just that routine. It's so average. Everything in between is just so routine. Like, if you've seen the Hills Have Eyes remake or the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with Arlie Emery, if you've seen the Friday the 13th remake, if you've seen any of those modern day horror movies, Hostel, Saw, House of Wax, they all did this way better. So yeah, that's basically my spoiler-free review, is that only the opening scene and the ending sequence are any good. Everything else in between. And this horror movie's 100 minutes long. It did not need to be that long. It felt padded too. It felt like it was stretching on long. Like the middle part stretches on way too long. Like between the opening sequence and the very final finale. It just stretches on way too long. This could easily have been 80 minutes. They could have easily cut a lot out. So that's my spoiler-free review. I was kind of disappointed with this one. Special effects, the opening sequence, special effects in the opening sequence and the final sequence are pretty good. They are. But everything else in between, you can tell they blew their budget on the opening scene and the final sequence. You can tell that's all they had in the budget, because everything in between is just, there's no special effects, hardly any special effects. And it's just, there's a little bit of nudity, but not a lot of gore, and it's just really boring. But because it has such a strong opening and such a strong ending, I'm not going to give this a really shitty rating. What would I give this out of 10? I'm thinking, like 6, maybe. I'm thinking maybe a 5.9, actually. Yeah, it's just not any good. I can't believe the rave reviews this has gotten. That's what I think I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with a 5.9, honestly, to give this movie. In case you don't know the synopsis, it's called Timber Falls, and basically this boyfriend and girlfriend go up camping in the woods, up in the sticks, and there's different trails, and there are some trails that you should stay on because they're patrolled by them, I think, forest rangers. But there's other trails that you shouldn't go on because there are people that live up there and they may not be friendly, and they don't really patrol those trails very well. And one of the trails is called Timber Falls, and this couple, stupidly decides to go up Timber Falls, and they. It's your typical, hillbilly horror movie. They encounter some, people who live up in the woods and they get kidnapped, and it's all standard fare. But, yeah, and what the hillbillies want to do with them, why they kidnap them, is really stupid. I was like, what? Really? That's why they want to kidnap them? It was just kind of stupid. And the hillbillies are kind of Bible thumpers. They're really religious. Kind of reminded me of the RV family in Rest Stop. The Rest Stop series, Rest Stop and Rest Stop Don't Look Back, kind of reminded me of that. And the Lord Savior, He shall cut your eyes out if you sin. That's what they're kind of like. But I thought in Rest Stop, they did it way better. Like, oh man, like if it weren't for like the opening sequence and the final sequence, this movie would have just been garbage. Like, ugh. Like, I did recognize there's like a woman who lives up with the hillbillies, and I recognized her from something. I don't remember what. Um, I recognized her from something. I recognized her from some movie. I didn't recognize hardly anybody else in this movie. What did I recognize her from? I'm looking her up on Internet Movie Database right now just to see. I recognized her from something. Um, damn. Where did I recognize her from? Sorry. She's been in a lot of things. I have no clue. I do recognize her from something. So basically, I'm gonna get into spoilers now, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But so the couple go up there, and they decide to go on Timber Falls, and immediately they start, they like start having sex in the middle of the woods. And I'm like, isn't this a public park? I mean, or public trails? Don't you think someone would stumble upon them, perhaps? So why were they having sex in the middle of of this like state park? And wouldn't you know it, these hillbillies stumble upon them, and they're like your stereotypical deliverance type hillbillies, but they don't. One thing is that they don't look very convincing though. They didn't look like hillbillies. They didn't make me believe they've been living up in the sticks. Like they actually look just like regular city guys, who just slapped on some flannel. But they have rifles and stuff, and they're like, "Damn, bitch, it's hot!" And they start like hassling these two hikers. They're like, they start giving them. There's like four of them, and they rip them. They say, "Well, if you want to pass, you got to buy this our moonshine," and so they sell them a thing of moonshine for $50. So they rip them off pretty much, and then they just leave them alone. So they're not really that threatening. And so one thing is that the boyfriend of the girl actually brings a handgun up, and he almost draws a handgun on these guys, but he doesn't, because they leave after they rip him off for some moonshine. And then this girl, she's like, "Oh, you need to throw the handgun away. I'm not gonna let you have this." And I'm like, "What? Are you kidding, bitch? If anything, I would keep the handgun at this point." But he's like, "Okay, I'll throw the bullets away." And I'll throw the gun away when we get home, because some kids could find it. And I was like, "What? God, don't listen to her. Keep the gun." So obviously, what ends up happening is the girl goes missing. He runs around frantically trying to find her. He accused the hillbillies of abducting her, but they don't. They didn't abduct her, but he kind of gets confused, and he beats one up, and then he runs away, and he gets caught in like a bear trap or something. And this woman like rescues him and brings him to her cabin. And I was like, oh, she's in on it. She's in it. She is so in on it. And I called that one. And it's like this religious family that lives up there. And the hillbillies that he accused at first of kidnapping his wife actually aren't even in league with the actual kidnappers. They're just like these like idiots who just live up in the woods. They're not even in league with the actual kidnappers. And so he gets taken by this woman to her house, and they are the actual kidnappers, and she has this husband who's actually a state park ranger. And their whole thing, why they kidnapped him and his girlfriend, is because they want to marry them, and they want to make them have a baby, and then they're going to take the baby as their own because they can't conceive. And it's like, and that's the whole reason why they're kidnapping hikers. And they kidnap two hikers at the beginning too, but they get killed. They get killed off, and it's just to introduce us to the film. But and yeah, it's like that's the dumbest reason. I thought, like, you're just kidnapping hikers just to get their baby. Like, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of a stupid thing. I mean, it sort of reminded me of Hills Have Eyes Part 2, which I believe the mutants were kidnapping women so they could, act as brood mares. But it's just done really stupidly in this movie. And like I said, through this whole sequence, there's hardly any, like, gore or any blood or anything like that. And the special effects that they do have are the cheap type of special effects. The people who kidnap the guy and his girlfriend do torture them, but they torture them in ways that are very low budget, non-impressive. It's not until the boyfriend and his girlfriend, break out and start kicking ass that and you get into the final sequence of the film that it actually gets pretty good. Like, they actually have some decent special effects at that point. So it seems like they didn't disperse, their horror effects budget evenly throughout the film. I guess that's how I would describe what's wrong with this film. So yeah, I would probably give it. I'm thinking a 5.9. Honestly, I just was not impressed by this film. I'd heard a lot of glowing things about it. Um, but yeah, that's my review. Once again, it's called Timber Falls. Was released in 2007, and just very not impressed by this. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not direct to DVD bullshit, but it's kind of close. Like if it weren't for the opening scene and the ending scene, it would be. I mean, anyway, okay, take it easy. Bye.